There was no planet in no universe, multi or otherwise, in which Saquon Barkley was ever playing in the game tomorrow night. It was never going to happen, and as such, they rule him out a full 24 hours before the game. That happened fast, right? Game time decision to ruled out like 30 hours before the game starts. Yeah, I think that probably is more in line with, the sprained ankle injury report on a short week on the road. It's not just Saquon Barkley, though, Ken, that's out for the New York Football Giants. Also ruled out on Wednesday, left tackle Andrew Thomas, starting guard Ben Bredesen, and pass rusher Azeez Ojulari. Also, the Giants have 0 sacks this season. 0 in 2 games, and now missing one of their better pass rushers. That sounds bad against the San Francisco 49ers, and that offensive line and all the weapons they've got now. San Francisco may be without the services of star wide receiver Brandon Ayuk. The team saying he will be a true game-time decision coming up tomorrow night.
When this opened Niners minus 10, the first move in the game was up, and we guessed on Monday when we talked about this game that was going to be people trying to bet 10, thinking Saquon definitely wouldn't play, and maybe the line would close a little more than that, or just that they like the Niners at minus 10. If Saquon's not going to play, you could certainly understand that handicapping opinion. And then, it's kind of got more injury info, what's happening with Brandon Ayuk, maybe just like organic interest in the Giants at 10.5. We're basically back down to 10 again, so we're kind of right where we started. Niners minus 10 is the consensus number basically everywhere. And the total in the game has only been bet down over the course of the week, opened 45.5, now between 44 and 44.5, depending on where you go. MGM hanging a 44.5 right now. And these things they don't move in tandem, but they all kind of make sense, right? If Saquon Barkley is not going to play and the Giants offensive line is going to be beat up a lot, then that probably affects their ability to both be competitive in the game and score points. And so that probably means Niners by a lot, and it means a slightly lower scoring game than we were originally expecting. So sitting 10 and 44.5 right now.
Yeah, I think the total of the game's really interesting, and we talked about this on Monday, right? Like I said, maybe it's an overlook in this game, even if Saquon doesn't play, because I think the Niners will basically be able to name their score. Then we get news that Brandon Ayuk may not play in the game. He'll be a game-time decision, and maybe I'm kind of overthinking it a little bit here, but Kyle Shanahan was basically asked directly, and I think, Ken, you addressed this earlier in the week, right? I think maybe it was yesterday with one of our guests. Shanahan asked after the game on Sunday against the Rams, Christian McCaffrey is basically playing every snap. That's not normally how you run your offense with multiple running backs. And Shanahan was like, I probably shouldn't do that. I think we'll see more Elijah Mitchell in the game on Thursday night, which is probably good for San Francisco long-term, but also probably impacts their ability to score a ton of points and win by margin, Ken, in this specific game. So I've cooled my Jets a little bit on the total in this game. I still would only bet over if I had to bet it, just because I think the Niners will be able to score a lot. But I think this might be just like a big stay away on Thursday night from a side and total perspective, which stinks to kick off the week. We'll have some props, but I don't think I'm going to bet this game side or total.
The linchpin of the handicap for betting offensive player of the year this week is essentially Christian McCaffrey and how his usage will change, or will it change based on what Kyle Shanahan's saying and how much McCaffrey's been used so far. If McCaffrey, let's say he plays the entire season and he gets the type of usage he's got in the front, he's going to run away, pun intended, he's going to run away with this award and lead the league in rushing and lead the league in rushing touchdowns, and he will win. They'll go 14-3 and he'll just win the award. That will happen. But Thursday will be a really interesting test of, sort of like Shanahan's message to the media. If it's less McCaffrey, then it's less stats. And if it's less stats, then he can't be the favorite to win the award, even if he's really, really productive. So really just, a direct award application, one of the best offensive players in the entire league, and the favorite right now, honestly, favorite in my mind, at least to an offensive player of the year. Does he keep getting the ball as much as he's gotten the first 2 weeks? Even if you don't bet Thursday night, it's a fascinating thing to follow throughout the game. It affects the handicap of literally the favorite for one of the most popular awards to bet.
Here's my Christian McCaffrey story from this week. My wife asked me a couple days ago if Olivia Culpo's boyfriend still played in the National Football League. And it took me a second. I was like, you mean Christian McCaffrey? Yeah. Oh, yeah, he still plays.
He's quite good. Yeah.
Joining us right now to break it all down, the Bear, Chris Fallica. Star now of Fox Sports. Their gambling coverage doing an unbelievable job on Big Noon Kickoff. They'll be in Cincinnati this week for Oklahoma and Cincinnati with my guy Brady Quinn, among others. And he's also the host of Bear Bets, a new awesome sports betting podcast featuring Jeff Schwartz, featuring Will Hill, and our good friend Sam Panayotovich, who joins us every single Phenomenal Football Friday here, has for years on You Better You Bet. So again, everyone be sure to check out Bear Bets, awesome college football and NFL betting podcast podcast hosted by our guest right now, the Bear, Chris Fallica. Bear, thanks so much for making the time. Nick and Ken, you bet on a Wednesday. How's it going?
We're doing all right. We survived the Napoli Braga under 3.5, 2-1 with a late own goal. So we're okay right now. So we're doing all right.
Bear, let's go to Florida State and Clemson. I can't wait for this game. Gonna have a bet on the Seminoles. Florida State, a 2.5-point road favor. Total about 55. Clemson plus 110 on the money line for those intrepid souls. Any thoughts here on Florida State and Clemson? Any bets in this game?
It feels kind of like it's a good spot for Florida State. Normally, you would never say going on the road and laying a short number at Death Valley is a good spot. But with how poor Florida State was last week, just kind of a predictable sleepwalking type atmosphere at a bad team who was emotionally charged on the red bandana day, which they always seem to play well. And Florida State has struggled up there in the past. Like, it was not surprising to see that game under the number. Certainly it was a little surprising to see BC with an opportunity to win or send that game to overtime in the fourth quarter. But I think a performance like that is kind of what Mike Norvell would maybe like. You never admit it, but I think privately be like, okay, good. They got a bad game out of the way. We can refocus them in practice and say, hey, here's what happens when you don't pay attention to detail, when you're not fully invested, when you take teams for granted. And I think now you go on the road against Clemson, who's been the top dog in the ACC now since about 2015. And like, I know they beat a bad FAU team, but I'm not there with Clemson. Like, if you look at how they've done dating back to the end of the 2020 season, I believe it is now, the last 10 games that they have played against teams that either finished the year ranked or ranked in the case of Duke right now, they're 2-8 in those games. So there's clearly something missing with Clemson. I worry about that offensive line against Verse and that Florida State front. And can they match Florida State point for point? I'm not so sure. And yeah, Clemson is, I think, a little bit better than what we saw in the Duke game. But at the same time, I think Florida State, with the way they've used the transfer portal to replenish the wide receiver core and a bunch of holes on that team, I'm with you, Nick. I'd lay the points here with the Noles, and if you don't want to avoid laying the points and just kind of buy yourself the 2.5 points of insurance, you could probably just play the money line as well and take the point spread out of it.
Bear, I'm curious because if we play this out and we have Florida State winning this game, obviously they already beat LSU in week 1. Those are probably the two toughest games on their schedule. You know, you got the rivalry games. Miami and Florida are always going to be a little tricky, but you kind of look at the rest of the schedule. If they get past this game, you go, man, this team could put up like a big record this year. You know, we always want to be careful about putting all the 4 teams in the playoff. You know, the first month of the season, things can kind of go crazy, but do you see Florida State as a likely playoff team? Do you see them as a potential national champion? I mean, that's kind of seems like if you haven't beaten Clemson, that's kind of in play for them.
That's the great thing about this season. And I was kicking this around the other day. Like, you could tell me right now the 4 playoff teams are Florida State, Washington, Texas, and Penn State, and I'd believe it. You could tell me the 4 playoff teams were USC, Notre Dame, Michigan, and whomever, and I'd believe it. It's awesome that we finally, for the first time in the playoff era, don't have a clear favorite. Like, Georgia is the favorite, and they'll probably get things figured out. But they certainly looked like they had some holes in that first half last week against South Carolina. But you're right. I think with Florida State, the key will be not picking up that second loss where if you pick up a loss in the regular season, you've got to obviously win the ACC title game. But if you get to the ACC title game and you're undefeated and maybe you lose a rematch with Clemson or you lose a rematch with Florida State, there's a little bit of leeway there where things maybe work out. Maybe you still get into the playoff because you can say, hey, we played LSU in one of the tougher non-conference games of the year. We went to Clemson and win. We beat Miami in the regular, whatever the circumstance is. And I still think they would have a legit case. But yeah, I do think Florida State is a team that I would certainly be looking at playing right now in the national title odds. I think they're right around 14 to 1 or somewhere around there. I think at last check, or 12 to 1 was I think what they were at last look. But certainly I think if you played them maybe this week to win the ACC and they happen to go to Clemson and win, you're going to see a significant leap in that price. And then probably you're looking at a position where if they get to the ACC title game, you could play something back on the dog in that game and lock in a profit.
The LA Rams have traded running back Cam Akers to the Minnesota Vikings for a swap of 2026 draft picks, probably like a sixth for a fifth, something like that. This is per ESPN's Adam Schefter. So what does this mean? It means a couple of things. It means that Kieran Williams is now absolutely locked into the Rams' number one running back job. We know Sean McVay likes to use like one running back as a bell cow. We saw that last year down the stretch with Cam Akers. We've seen it over the past with Rams running backs, right, under Sean McVay. So Kieran Williams is going to play like all the snaps. I think he played 76 out of 77 snaps last week for the Los Angeles Rams. Ronnie Rivers is like the primary backup. The high upside backup, though, is rookie Zach Evans. So if you've got Kieran Williams and you want to get his handcuff in case he gets hurt, Ronnie Rivers will be like, I think, the next in line, but the guy with actual upside is Zach Evans. Yeah, I think Zach Evans has got some upside. And Kieran Williams, like, locked in running back starter for the rest of the year in fantasy and, like, is good in real life also. Was good in college at Notre Dame. So what does this mean for the Minnesota Vikings now? Alexander Mattison has been a total dud the first 2 weeks of the season. Now, some of that's, a little bit game script, especially last week against Philly. He put the ball on the turf a couple times last week, fumbled, lost 2 fumbles, but did not run well against the Bucs. Now, Tampa Bay has an excellent defensive line, but Madison has not really looked good. Behind Alexander Mattison, Ty Chandler, who's got some explosion, someone that I've been excited about to have as like a handcuff to Madison, or as like if Madison gets hurt, a potential lottery ticket. My guy, Kene Nwangwu, who's been on IR and his kind of like season's been hampered by injury thus far. So this trade for Cam Akers is like, for me, a vote of no confidence for the Vikings in Alexander Mattison as the lead running back. So I think like Ty Chandler is like out of the picture at this point. Maybe like change of pace back sometimes. This is going to be a two-man backfield now with Alexander Mattison and Cam Akers. And if Mattison plays like he's played the first 2 weeks, and if he keeps fumbling, Akers is going to be the 1A and Mattison is going to be the 1B in this backfield for Minnesota. So there's like, I think like, honestly, like I'm pretty good at this. There's some high-level fantasy analysis for you. Yeah. Also, as a result now, for Minnesota's game this weekend against the Chargers, now, assuming Cam Akers is active, it's Wednesday. We'll see if he's active. We'll play Ty Chandler anytime touchdown at a big price. Like the running back at the longest odds that'll be active in the game. So that'll definitely be a bet we make, assuming Cam Akers is active in the game. And there is your analysis. Cam Akers traded to the Minnesota Vikings.